You are listening to Radio Belvaspata South Africa. You are listening to Radio Belvaspata South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almine, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
And a warm welcome to Radio Belvaspata South Africa, broadcasting east of Johannesburg, worldwide. It is Thursday, the 1st of March, which means we are now coming into early autumn here in South Africa. But from what I see, many huge big storms of snow and weather around the world in the northern hemisphere. Welcome to the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you enjoy the next hour of sharing, of caring, of being together as a light family. And let's examine today the fluidity of life as we live a life of high magic. Absolutely incredible. Lots of Almine audio for us today. We're literally going to see where we've come from in the last few months and where we are at right now within ourselves. And that's going to be just really very, very informative and just let us settle into the moment of being together and allowing ourselves to understand just through perception what is going on. The seer Almine tells us that the beginning of power is perception and the beginning of high magic is power. And that really, I think, highlights so much of where we are at, personally, individually perhaps, but also as humanity expands and dissolves the old processes. We seem to be suppressing parts of our former selves on some level, but also expressing parts of them at the same time. We are living in a time of great paradox, and it's great just to be able to get our perception wrapped around all of those and not to find things as right or wrong. But there's lots of beliefs I feel, and I look within myself and my own journey, that we are talking about transitioning, but we're not understanding that full aspect of the need and the journey of transcendence, which literally means we need to allow ourselves to let go of everything that ever was and allow ourselves to step into this complete new reality, a new dimension of being in a brand new experience, which is certainly where we are going to, because we are poised on it. We are starting to absorb it and start to work with it. It's such an exciting journey. But Nick and I were speaking, early this morning hours, which is when we tend to do some of our good conversations. And we were saying it feels like we are living in several realities at once. We're definitely dissolving very, very dense life experiences, but we're also forging ahead with new structures. And there's an excitement and there's a trepidation. There's a moment of panic and there's a moment of passion and enthusiasm all coming together at once. If we're not careful, it can really take over. And then that experience, those emotions can then dictate how we're going to be. So just take care of yourself as we're going through all of that. But as I said, the seer Almine has said that the beginning of power is perception and the beginning of high magic is power. So let's listen now to a short clip that has been put up in Almine Diary, where she talks about the prophesied Mars cataclysm that now no longer going to take place, and she describes in details why. And the reason why we're playing is so we can actually look at the power that we have within ourselves as we proceed through this incredible journey of transcending the old and ushering in the completely unfathomable new. what power we have as our perception comes in. And this is all done with no need to fix anything, but just realize where we are at. So let's listen to, did the prophesied Mars cataclysm take place? You may have heard it, but it's part of the show and it leads into the rest of it. So let's do that.
In duality, the gods governed the earth by governing themselves. In awakening, they govern the solar system by governing themselves. What has happened is that when you combine the high heart and the heart chakra, you create a unified field around the Earth and Mars. On the 15th of February, Mars was supposed to have its major cataclysm with millions of people dead. As in a unified field with the Earth, all the work we do to keep the Earth stable and evolving also happens on Mars. This will pull them beyond this danger point. So, very important for us to do that. The group that I met with in December managed to pull Mars out of this cataclysmic occurrence on the 15th of February. But in the future, more of you will do this equation, by living these things and allowing them to change the way you look at life. And so life on Mars has been very hard for the humans there. They've been in a war zone for 40 years and many other problems, total dictatorial government, which incidentally, with the dissolving of these boundaries that Spirit has placed around life, will become more fluid. The government there will change because of combining the field. And this is the beginning. But all this together creates the fact that life on Mars, with all its millions of people, will henceforth be affected by what we do. In awakening, they govern the solar system by governing themselves.
And there was the Almine discussing about the prophesied Mars cataclysm and how it has really shifted and changed because of the understanding and ability to bring self-government, self-sovereignty, self-sustenance into place. And you and I, we're all working on all of that very differently. Otherwise, we wouldn't be working with the show tonight. We wouldn't be listening to it. It has deep meaning for us. And congratulations on just recognizing that within yourself, because sometimes this work that we're doing is absolutely just at that point where we just completely do not understand. But we have learned over time just to let it be, and then sooner or later an understanding begins to dawn. And so our perception changes, and as our perception changes, then we become more powerful because our understanding allows us to see deeper and see further than we've ever seen before. The Seer Almine's just come back from 5 days, which he spent to release the tyranny of the mind. And the post that went up, we broadcast this last week. She says, "My dear light family, on Monday I will go into solitude and silence for 5 days to release the tyranny of linear mind. I don't know what to expect, but I know its time has come as my next step. Before I go, I've asked that the following be shared with you as a message of how much I love you," and she'd given us a song which we also played last week. So we've just gone back into the archives a little bit and thought, well, let's take it back now to some old discussions from Almine. And before she shares, what happened within that 5 days of silent retreat that she went into, let's look at where we've come from and then look forward to what she will share with us. And it will be amazing the journey that has actually happened and where we are sitting at this moment. So here's an old audio. It's a short one. It's about Almine talking about breaking the tyranny of ego, or what is called surface mind. So let's go into that and enjoy what she has to share, and I'll see you on the other side of this.
I am very frequently asked by students and people alike, why The tyranny of surface mind has such a grip on us. Is there a way to break it? Well, yes, there is. There are multiple ways, and it has been the quest of light seekers throughout the ages. Let's just take a look at a few. For instance, if the mind can be stretched, and stretched further than it thought it could go, the more you stretch the mind, the more it has to ultimately admit defeat. It will try and attack that which stretches it. I often say to students that if they can make it beyond the first 2 days of our 5-day-long classes, that then they're making it into mastery. Because the rest of the way is easy. It's the first 2 days when the surface mind fights for dear life. So you can stretch it by making it look or see further than it has ever seen before. That is one way to do it. And another way, which I personally find less effective, is for a miracle to happen. But the surface mind tends to argue away miracles in the face of extraordinary events. However, there are times when it is just so irrefutable that it has to admit that there is something that it cannot understand. People that are left-brain oriented, using that approach of going beyond where mind has ever gone before, is more valuable. The unexplainable puts mind in its place, one step at a time. When people, however, tend to approach life from a more emotional point of view, one way to overcome surface mind is to simply sidestep it. It is done through praise and love and gratitude. Those 3 attitudes are called the Ascension attitude. It is said by the Ascended Masters that if you can, in fact, be grateful for every single thing that comes your way, even the seeming opposition, knowing that the Infinite sends nothing but good, either lessons or gifts, and if you look at them from a bird's eye perspective, in fact, they're the one and the same. So therefore, if you can feel that gratitude in you for every single thing, for even a few weeks, you can set yourself free from the tyranny of surface mind. Many prefer praise, to spend all their waking moments that they are not at their job or not taking care of their children in a state of great praise. People say, but my bills are unpaid, the dishes are unwashed, my husband's maybe having an affair. What is there to be grateful for or to send praise to the Infinite for? That is the speech of someone who is unaware, who lives life in sleep. The very bush by the wayside is aflame with the glory of the Infinite. Every human soul, deep down inside, if our awareness can reach that far, is beautiful. The answer to the starry sky is the Infinite within us. There is much to be grateful for. Our bodies are complete miracles. If we just do a bit of computation to see how many heartbeats there is in a lifetime, how many breaths we take, all of this without thinking. To echo the words of the psalmist in the Old Testament, "For truly I am fearfully made." There is much to be grateful for, even in our own bodies. This is another way to sidestep mind and set ourselves free by raising our frequency through these attitudes, which are called the Ascension attitudes, to such a high state that perception has to leap in order to catch up. That is the point in which we become free from the tyranny of surface mind.
And we've got more Almine audio also coming up. And this is one of her Pathway to Ascension classes. It's a half-hour class. A lot of Almine audio tonight. but it's entitled How to Live Life as an Ascended Master, and it's part 7 of the Pathways to Ascension. It is, as I said, half-hour class with her, but so worthwhile, just taking us back and expanding the basics of understanding the work that each one of us doing as we ascend into this complete new transcended reality of being. And it is just so incredibly, definitely going on, so exciting. But then there's that other side of things too. I know what you're saying, and I know what you're thinking about that probably, but please share with us your comments here on Spreaker.com's page throughout the show about your experiences, and then perhaps we could have some interaction about that. But here we go, Living as an Ascended Master by the Seer.
In living as an ascended master among men, living these beautiful ascension attitudes, it is necessary that we know what to expect. Beloved ones, you don't need to eat. You may want to eat, and you may find that it is easier when you do eat to interact with others. You will sleep much, much less as you go into these more elevated states. There are also dramatic changes in the emotional states that you will be going through. Sometimes they will be very heightened, and sometimes they will actually be almost non-existent, depending on the phase that you're in during your progression. Don't worry about it. Just make sure that wherever you are, you know that this is no point of arrival, that life is a journey, it is not a camp. In living amongst men, they will not notice unless they are able to see refined light, or they are able, as more and more are, through cameras, to pick up this refined light that emanates from around you. But you see, it's easy to mistake masters that are not stuck. And let me explain what I mean by that. We are used to defining master as a very specific type of being. Generally, those masters have been over-gravitating into the bliss. They are the masters that are vastly, vastly expanded. Or they are the masters that tell you that which you already know in your heart. So let's take a look at this. When you are in ego identification, the masters that you generally go to are also in ego identification for the most part. You can go to other masters that are deeply in bliss. They give some hints as to how to live, but they generally don't even know how they got where they are. And they will speak about the truisms of life. They will speak about the beautiful things that we all know in our hearts to be true. These teachers are teachers of the known. To over-gravitate into the bliss is to over-gravitate or over-polarize into the known, which is light. When a master or a teacher, because a master, if you recall, is one who has the option of silencing the mind. When they teach, they are teaching that which makes our hearts go, yes, I know that. Yes, I should remember this. I know this already, but I don't live it, so I need to remember it or make more of a concerted effort or, nice way to present it. I know that love is needed for my fellow man, but yes, now I can see it a little clearer. They are teachers of the known. And especially once they disconnect from ego and go into the deep bliss, they are easily spotted. We know that those are masters. What is not easy to spot are those that make it beyond those phases, where one must go or stagnate.
So as they make it beyond the stages, what they are delving into by the second phase of immortality, they need to start looking very, very closely, not at the known, not even at the unknown, but the unknowable. Now, we have made many video clips. You can go to our website and see where to find them. Many of them speak of the known and the unknown and the unknowable. But essentially, the unknown is known to the rest of the cosmos. The known is known to man. The hidden realms can see far clearer than we can because their perspective is different. It's not that they are more elevated in consciousness. They have a different perspective. They could be more elevated, but it's not necessarily so. So they can see things that we can't. For us, what they can see is the unknown, but for them, it's again just the known. When the unknowable comes into the known, growth happens for every single solitary being. This is the glorious destiny of an ascended master, that they bring in what has never before been known. And as they do, the entire cosmos raises up just a small notch, if that's what it is. But everything grows. That's the unknowable. Masters that deal with the unknowable do not sit in the poise and the bliss. They live in poise, but it's hard to spot because their poise is lived with compressed time. Now, to understand that, moments before an accident happens, we find that they're like minutes long. They don't feel like moments. The reason is that we are that fully aware and attentive to every little detail as the accident is about to happen. We buckle up the baby, we move the heavy object that might fly through the car upon impact, we brace the children, we tell so-and-so to get their head down in the car, but we do it all and it seems like minutes long when it was but a few moments. This is living in compressed time. To somebody witnessing this, it would seem as though life is very chaotic, as if you're flurrying around and scurrying around, but to you time has slowed down, and so it is not so. Ascended masters live in compressed time. So it could seem to another that they are in constant activity and motion when they're working. Of course, a master lives in balance, so they are balancing doingness and beingness. In the second big stage, or if someone is stuck in the bliss, they only want to be in the beingness, not in doingness. So there is not the proper pulsation to provide them the energy for further growth. So the ascended master, however, balances doingness and receptiveness or rest, the inner life with the outer life. And so they once again might walk among men, peddling their fish in the market, doing their work in the dentist's office, or whatever it is that they do. Why would they? Because this is where they find the unknowable. It is in the midst of humanity, which is the densest being in creation, where the unknowable and the known meets. Think of a light bulb and think of a room around the light bulb. We are as far away from the light bulb as we can come in terms of density. To go any further, you have to leave the room. Exactly my point that I'm trying to make. If you leave the room, even for a moment, you are delving into the unknowable. It is in physicality where the true unknown is accessed and turned into the known through experience. Thus, the Ascended Master knows never to withdraw from experience. And so they delve back into life, and they push life to the edge. because they want to see further than it has ever seen before by any being anywhere. And thus the master that is in full-blown ascension and not resting on his or her laurels are delving into the unknowable, whereas we are used to identifying masters as those who are overpolarized, perhaps, into the known. We want to see a master in sedateness, in sereneness, in poise, but a master knows how to compress time, and they can do 10 things for every 2 things that somebody in identity consciousness can do. And they do, because to them it seems like a peaceful pace. So very easily missed masters that are in ascension. Those who have at some times gained immortality and chosen not to go to the ascended mastery realms, which until recently was quite rare, but there are a few, would move from village to village to village, whether they're in China. Several Taoist immortal masters that I've encountered are ancient, or in India. They're taken for granted. Oh, those are the masters. They don't die. Or they could move from town to town. There is a beautiful piece of writing which is in the Apocrypha. And the Apocrypha, my beloved brothers and sisters, are the books of the Bible that have been thrown out by the old Catholics, masters or priests that did the selection of which books were worthy of going into what today is assembled as the Bible. Some beautiful scriptures were tossed out on their ear, and one such one is the Odes of Solomon. Another one that is very beautiful and speaks of the ascension process that someone is going through is Esdras. I believe it is spelled Esdras. But the Odes of Solomon, he speaks of himself becoming an ascended master, and he says, I had the form and fashion of a strange person, and all who saw me were amazed. Well, the reason they were amazed is because he didn't age. He stayed youthful and young in his body and his face, and everybody around him aged. It's a very strange feeling, and that is what he is describing. And he said, my prison bars melted before me, and lo, I was the door of everything. The prison bars that melted before him is human limitations, mortal boundaries. Because as the belief systems are discarded, as you no longer believe that you have to burn in fire, for example, as we mentioned earlier on, then you don't. And so miracles abound. Because as the belief systems go, so do the mortal boundaries. So do the can'ts. And all of a sudden you find that life is full of cans. And so these prison bars that he is speaking of, they're the belief systems. And nothing appeared closed before me means, in fact, that he is entering a state in which miracles are commonplace. When we work in my classes together, in the beginning of the week, we go, isn't this amazing? Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it fantastic? And every week for me is higher than any week I've ever lived with students before. And yet by the end of the week, we have forgotten that we are in this cocoon in which miracles have become commonplace. This is the way in which a master lives in the flesh. So let us take a look at what it takes to disconnect from belief systems. If we disconnect from belief systems, we become free from the human grid. And this is the way a master should live. To become free from the human grid, initially, when masters are in God consciousness, they interact sparingly, as we have mentioned, because they do not want to be pulled back into the games, nor do they want to have their energy leaked. And they also are familiar with the phenomenon that does happen to ascended masters in the flesh. People are more familiar with sensing fear in others. When they sense instead the love, could be felt as an irritation. It could be felt as something that makes them uncomfortable, something they wish to withdraw from. Because love flushes up all the parts of someone else that they do not themselves love. If we are in a state of ascended mastery where we are in the total silence of the mind, the love floods our heart. We become unpredictable because we live from this love-based place of heart. We live a path with heart, as the Toltecs call it. As we live a path with heart, we start to dance to a different drummer. We dance to our own music, and he who cannot hear that music thinks that the dancer is mad. And I'm quoting now the Sufi philosopher Rumi. It is the case. We no longer are dancing according to social conditioning. We are dancing according to the dictates of our heart, who is receiving potential directly from Source. And so we become a strange person, as the master who wrote the Odes of Solomon is speaking about. If we take a look at how these perceptions form, they form very early in life, because the baby realizes that to do one action doesn't make mommy and daddy smile. To do another action makes them go, ooh, clever baby, and they all smile, and everybody feels very happy, and warm, fuzzy feelings surround the baby. And so from the very beginning, when their assemblage point is able to freely move, that point becomes more and more fixed by programmed behavior. And the programming comes from the parents, and so the baby starts to have a more fixed assemblage point, and unfortunately stop seeing into the other dimensions, stop seeing the hidden realms and all the beings around us. As the child grows older, there is punishment for stepping too far out of the box. There is approval for staying within the belief systems of the parents. The apartheid-driven South Africa that I encountered in youth was so programmed that one could not see another without fear if they had a different color. Or you couldn't see another without hate because they were the oppressors. It was very difficult to overcome these social conditioned responses to our fellow man. But South Africa is well on its way to doing just that. I have recently visited there to teach, and great strides are being made in integrating and creating friendships amongst all races. The programming we received is based on punishment or reward. In the tribe that our parents are in, there are those assets that are valued and those that are not. Unfortunately, in most of our Western societies, we are valued by our doingness, not our beingness. And so slowly but surely, the child gets programmed out of valuing the non-cognitive, the magical, the exquisite beauty of the unseen realms, the whisperings of spirit, into a left-brain-dominated society that values action over non-cognitive receptiveness. This is one of the ways that the child becomes left-brain oriented. Another way in which that programming takes place is that the child says, "Mommy, there is a fairy on my lunch bucket." And Mommy says, "Look, it's time for you to start telling the truth. But, Mommy, I see a fairy on my lunch bucket." And the mommy gets very upset and says, now, if you don't stop lying, I'm going to have to tell your father, and we're going to have to enforce some punishment. Because the mother is thinking that the child will make a fool of themselves. I recently had a parent come to me, and they were very concerned. The mother was very highly educated and in the judicial system. In fact, she was a judge. And she came to me and said, I'm so concerned. My child is such a liar. And she said she keeps seeing fairies and talking to them. And she sees this and that and the other. And I went and fetched my book called Aruba Firina, Book of Fairy Magic. And this book has a photograph of a fairy right in front of my face, about the size of a tennis ball. Completely unenhanced, authentic photographs taken interdimensionally. I showed this to the mother, and she was silent for the longest time. And then she said to me, when my mother was in advanced stages of dementia, she was a very intelligent woman at one point. But the doctor was sitting there speaking to me as though my mother wasn't in the room, and telling me how advanced her dementia was. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, she spoke up, and she said, perhaps the reality I have entered is not your reality, but to me it is real. In other words, we are being programmed to look at a certain reality as real and another as unreal. If it is fabricated, of course it is unreal. But if, for some reason, our assemblage points have shifted, or in not seeing life at face value anymore because of a dementia, we can see interdimensionally. It cannot be totally dismissed as fabricated. In this way, slowly, the unseen realms are being programmed out of the child. The master, once again, becomes like the child. For like the child, they live with innocence. Innocence is the result of living in the moment. Thoughts pull us out of the moment into the next or the one before. And as we have said, they are the result of resistance to life. Our innocence is found in the moment. The master lives in eternal time with full attention to the moment. Let's run with this idea of the resistance to life, because it is the primary cause that keeps us in ego identification. If one looks at black magic, what is black magic? The enforcing of one's will on reality. If you look at white magic, if it is from the correct source, it is in fact the revealing of the perfection that underlies appearances, an entirely different dynamic. Whenever black magic in the past has been practiced upon the planet, a planetary axis shift takes place. The planet's axis shift that has currently happened, in other words, it's not exactly straight up and down as upon its axis with true north and south. There's a slight tilt. It tells us in the book, The Gift of the Unicorns, the second half of this book speaks of the history of the cycles, and it speaks about how these shifts happened. In one instance, it was a gradual shift. It happened little bit by little bit. But in other instances, there was a more severe shift, and then there was a great loss of life. The meridian of the earth is straight up and down, and it shifts due to imposing will upon life versus the full cooperation with life that is the hallmark of mastery. What has this got to do with us? Well, it has to do with why aging occurs, why energy is lost, why death occurs, and why people are, in fact, causing their own demise through their resistance to life. When a being is born, The meridian of their body runs like a figure 8 vertically, crossing over in the life force center, which we mentioned has moved up to the heart center. The life force center is the crossover point for a vertical figure 8. As we start to oppose life, this vertical figure 8 starts to tilt, because opposing life to someone that has studied the Toltec traditions is a form of black magic. It is a form of imposing your will on life. We anticipate the future instead of allowing the future to come to us. We try and enforce our will, fearing that we have been left alone to fend for ourselves, not realizing that we are part of the great interconnectedness of all life, that we can never be alone, that every being dwells within our true identity as a unique perspective superimposed over all that is. And so, as we oppose life, this tilts, and we end up with a horizontal figure 8 called the Zavuya. And this word, the Zavuya, is the loop of time. The reason is, as this meridian tilts, whereas as a child we start off living in the moment, we end up creating for ourselves linear time. True linear time no longer exists, because as we have seen, awareness no longer moves. Linear time was the movement of awareness across the space of the cosmos. That is what linear time was. And now it doesn't move any longer. Linear time as a reality doesn't exist, but we can create for ourselves within our bodies linear time that we live, and it will manifest as tension in the body. That tension releases when we live in eternal time. So when we live in linear time, we have the time loop that the ancient Maya, and I think Arguelles was the one who wrote about this, Surfers of the Zavuya, I think he wrote about. They wrote about time a lot, but what they didn't realize is what they were writing about was the lowest levels of consciousness we can be in, which was ego identification. The Zavuya is not supposed to be horizontal through the belly button, or as it was, and then later through the heart. That is the result of resisting life. As we go into these later stages, the meridian is now vertical again, and we start to live in full awareness to the now, meaning we're living in the power of the moment. If we take a look further at this resistance to life that we bring about, in doing so, we usually live only from some chakras. Other chakras where trauma has occurred, or where programming has said, do not live out this chakra fully, we suppress. Let's look at an example of that. If you take a flower and you cut the flower's stem, immediately its life force spills out to the bottom. The ancient Druids knew this, and when they picked their herbs, or when they picked their food and their vegetables, they immediately laid it within a pan of water that they carried with themselves, or they put it on fabric that was lined inside, or straw inside a basket. They were hoping to alleviate the loss of energy and life force from the plant so that it could be cooked into the plant and ingested by them. We are like the flower that is cut when we are cut in our meridians. The root chakra. The minute a baby is born, programming takes place for about 5 minutes. It is imperative that only those with high consciousness handle a baby for the first 5 minutes of its life. If the nurse, holding the bottom of the baby, has problems or of shame, for example, with her own root chakra, this can be programmed into that baby. When a baby dolphin is born, for the first few moments of its life, all the other dolphins come around it, touching it with different parts of their body, programming it into it the highest wisdom that they carry. In this way, it is hoped that the generations grow in wisdom and in knowledge, one to the other. But as we touch the baby being unconscious, the baby gets those things programmed into it. So the root chakra could bear shame from birth. If we are experimenting with genitals, and this usually happens around the age of 5, and we are caught by a mother or a father, and it is not kindly dealt with, shame develops around feeling in the genital area. Later, we can deny feelings during sex, or we can search for the feelings during sex because we don't properly feel them, and so become overactive during sex. All of these things are indicative that there is a plug that forms in the chakras of a life that has not fully yielded its insights, and therefore a life that has not fully had its overcomings. It is therefore necessary for us to look at these areas of our lives. The second chakra, the chakra in which fear can lodge. In the second chakra, if we do not understand that to fear another is to fear ourselves, that to fear anything else is like madness, for we are truly the center of our existence, and all that we feel and dream and see within ourselves, we throw out upon the canvas around us. As Shakespeare said, I, your looking glass, shall be, and will reveal to you things which you yourself know not of. And the wonderful James Allen, philosopher, in his little book, As a Man Thinketh, says environment is but a looking glass. What is within will surely manifest without. And for us to fear what is without is to deny that which is within. If we change that which is within, it will immediately change that which is without.
And here you are on Radio Belvaspata South Africa, Thursday, the 1st of March 2018, broadcasting worldwide. I'm your host, Paul. Outside is Nico on Sound Desk, and we are running so beautifully through the show tonight. There we were listening to a class from the Seer Almine as she described what it is that we experience as we live the life of ascension and mastery. Absolutely incredible. And although that was an old audio, so beautiful to know that we've been through all these stages and that we can still experience them. We have a perception. We can handle them more powerfully as we progress and move. I'm always very careful to use the word advance and growth in our process, because this is just a journey of experience, and every day something new is unfolding for us. So lots of Almine audio, lots of Almine classes for us tonight. We might run over time a little bit. Please excuse us if we do. But I think the sequence of the audio clips and classes that we've got from the Almine will actually just help assist us to ground in this moment and to realize where we are all at as a family. And just spending this hour together for me every week is absolutely magical. And talking about magic, the last Saturday's webinar by the Seer Almine, or with the Seer, about becoming a master of high magic, absolutely incredible responses from it all over the world, and of course, a release from Almine when she talked about this glorious shift of consciousness, and we'll talk about that. Now, last week we did play the introduction from Almine about beyond subatomic particles and the stages of awakening. I'd like to just put this back into tonight's show as well, and just understand that this is part of understanding these stages that we are experiencing, and it just puts it into a more clearer, defined aspect for us to work through step by step. So here we go.
My beloved ones, welcome to this webinar series and part 1 of your training on how to become a master of high magic. We have experienced in the 4 great stages of the old dream certain ways of understanding the realities that were stacked 4 levels deep. We dealt with transformation, and that helped us eliminate all the old illusions that had come in to completely pollute the stage of pristine humanness. After that, we went to transmutation and understood, as we did our alchemy studies, that one can leverage the outcome. This is a level at which one can say that you have entered the God Kingdom's reality. It is the place whereby you realize that every action that you do translates into a very large end result. The choices of your life become more conscious, and you realize that there are no unimportant moments. Then, the next level that we went to was resurrection, and that level worked with transfiguration. And transfiguration is where one realizes you are no longer a body such as what humans have. And your body has completely changed. Your DNA has altered. There were hidden capacities in unseen organs that have come online. You are now a resurrected being, having combined life and death into one. But by the end of resurrection, you will go into the 4th stage, and this is a stage of transcendence. This is a stage in which you cross the bridge of no time and no space. It is the place where you rewrite reality by simply replacing it with a higher one. This higher one was the stages of awakening. And as you cross the bridge, you enter the first of the 4 stages of awakening. And the quality of the first of the 4 stages is high magic. To master it is to master the first of the stages of awakening. After the part 1 and part 2 of mastering high magic, which represents the 2 poles of high magic that have blended into one, part of it receptive, part of it proactive, happening at once. There is a part 2 that will take place about a month later, and it will be part 2 of mastering high magic. Once we achieve these, you will go to the second of the stages of awakening. And the quality of this journey that will be taught in 2 different webinars, part 1 and part 2, is the mastery of the white light and that which it represents. The mastery of the white light is the mastery of the unfathomable. When you master the unfathomable, and understand this means different than having control over, but when you are masterfully working with the unfathomable, which has immense power in your life and in your environment, you will have started to master the second stage of the white light. The white light stages, and there are 4, are simply another name for the stages of awakening. And what that indicates is that you have indeed no longer a reality around you that is made up of subatomic particles. You live within man's reality. God beings, resurrected beings, all of those live in a reality that have subatomic and atomic particles. Now you encounter yourself, the reality that you create around you, as having completely different building blocks of life. These building blocks, and the secret of this is, as before, mimic the shape and the nature of the cosmoses within the awakening stages, and which there are 4 themselves. If you look at the time map, whether you're looking at the cosmic time map or your personally prepared time map, you will see that it has 8 colors. The 8 colors, like Russian dolls, encompass one another. They lie within each other like spheres. This is the shape of that which is shapeless, in that it is fluid shape. It can become larger or smaller as your perspective changes. So, this is the building block of the cosmos that you have entered in your very own reality, even though you walk amongst men. And it is also the shape of the fluid shape of the cosmos. Now, beloved ones, I will be working with you, teaching you, explaining during this first webinar, the first 20 pages of the Book of Secrets.
And there was this here Almine talking about going beyond subatomic particles, these different stages of awakening, and some of the experiences that we will be having. I'm feeling that we are most certainly dissolving the ego identity of self, and although it can be incredibly tough at times, literally that process is happening as we transcend the old and bring in complete, unfathomably new experiences. Yes, I'm learning to say that word unfathomable more correctly now. After that incredible webinar last Saturday, the message that came from Almine was just so profoundly beautiful. She says there was a glorious shift of consciousness, and that was on February the 24th at 9:55 a.m., just after that webinar. She says, "My most precious ones, I have just had a very clear and important communication from the angel gods. Tell them that all the original ones who have been on the sacred journey of awakening to who they are have during this hour gone into the stages of the white light. Though there are yet some of you out there who walk among men and think that they are one of them, this glorious shift of consciousness will help them find their way to remembering too. Great and glorious the purification this event has set in motion on earth. Tears flow down my cheeks as I share this with you. I can see the blessings this will bring to all the kingdoms of the planet. My deep respect, love, and gratitude."
You are listening to Radio Belvaspata South Africa. The seer Almine tells us that in righting a wrong, we judge and divide. In acknowledging wholeness, we uplift and inspire the underlying perfection to reveal itself. This miraculous healing modality, a divine gift to humanity, neither tries to heal nor fight disease. To do so would affirm the existence of such illusions. Belvaspata replaces distorted matrices with clarity by emphasizing the expression of the pure luminosity and harmony that lies within each being. The stimulation of the true frequencies, the song of the self, in an individual creates self-healing by shattering the matrix within the body that holds disease programs in place. Belvaspata has achieved rapidly growing acclaim worldwide as the modality of choice, as its well-deserved reputation of success has spread among seasoned healers and newcomers alike. Healing miracles have been reported from many, many countries. Interdimensional photography has captured the angels that come to assist practitioners in their efforts to expose the perfection and grace of existence. Let the sacred work of bringing light to humanity spread around the world, one person at a time. Our hope is that each healer, each practitioner, and each listener to our show everywhere be blessed in their ability to roll back illusions of despair and fear. Within our hands lies the gift of hope and the miracle of pure light and frequency. Let us all live in those two magnificent, infinite gifts together. You are tuned to Radio Belvaspata South Africa. Global connection, cosmic content.
And you're back from the break. There was the Master Diane telling us all about this incredible modality of Belvaspata healing of the heart. And another important message from the seer came up. It's about the prophecy of the day of the purge. She says this is taken from the Chronicles of the Anu Tiama, which has been under discussion over the last year. She says, unseen, they will sink back into the ocean of consciousness whence they came. Huge discussion coming up about that next week. In the meantime, this message says that in this transmission that she received, Almine details how a prophecy from the Chronicles of the Anu Tiama was initiated with this glorious shift of consciousness that transpired during last Saturday's Becoming a Master of High Magic webinar. This prophecy will be fulfilled when the original ones pull humanity into the realms of the white light, purging 2/3 of mankind and the hidden realms in the process. There's an answer up on Almine Diary about all of this, but we'll be discussing it deeper next week. In the meantime, let's listen to this particular track from Almine, which we are playing just live, and it's the prophecy of the Day of the Purge. And for those who are into numerology, the track is exactly 11.11 minutes long.
My beloved light family, I want to share with those of you who were not
Okay, we're having a technical problem playing that particular track. Obviously, there's a signal issue going on here, so we won't play it, but we'll bring it in for next week because part of this massive discussion of really understanding that we have let go of so much of what was in terms of the ego identity of self, the tyranny of the mind that is associated with all of that. I can't wait to see what is released through the retreat from this year, Almine. And by the way, you might have figured out by now that we are losing our connection as well. The signal has seemed to have gone down for some reason or the other. And if you are listening to us, then fantastic. But if not, well, then at least you've heard most of the show. Let's hope that this continues. We're going to close off now just by some Almine wisdom that has just come up this week that fits, I think, perfectly to where we are all at. And it says, holiness is that which comes from the evolutionary stage beyond. Many who speak the retold wisdom of the world call themselves holy. But only those who have themselves progressed to the stage beyond the masses may call their words holy, and only until the masses have caught up with them. Beautiful ending for our show tonight. We hope that you've taken benefit. We apologize for the break in the transmission towards the end of the show, this last 1 or 2 minutes, but we're sure you got
or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.